Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabados of Delmar, and together with my co-host Mark Cornish of statewide news service, jbiztechphilly.com. And now, as you can see, he's the columnist for the Jewish Press, which is the biggest English Jewish newspaper weekly in the United States. So congratulations for that.
Well, thank you. I have a column in there called Albany Beat, and I talk about how the government relates to the Jewish community, or doesn't, as the case may be. And that's, you know, and our guest today has been featured in my Albany Beat column, which I've given you copies of. We have Assemblywoman Ellen Jaffe with us from Rockland County, from the Suffern area.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah,
Thank you
welcome.
For the invitation.
You had quite the roller coaster of a session this year, didn't you?
It was interesting and unfortunate in various aspects. Certainly, it started out and it became very difficult initially, but we moved on, focusing on our responsibility and responding to the needs of our constituents and our communities. You know, staying focused on that, and that's so essential. And obviously, budget time is always challenging.
I'm trying to figure out all well, we had the death of Mario Cuomo in the beginning. Yes. We had Sheldon Silver not step down from the speakership. And then we had a new speaker, Carl Hastie. Do you like him? Is he a good leader?
Yes, and you know, he took control, and it's because it's the first year with so many other things going on. It certainly was challenging for him, and
Are you being treated well by him? I mean, because there was some shifting going on, and
well, it's always something new that you have to work out. And
are you still chair of oversight?
I'm chair of oversight. Yes, oversight, analysis, and investigation.
That's right.
Which gives me a wide range of opportunities.
You had oversight over the assembly, or you're talking about New York State
over
in general?
Issues, general issues in New York State, and you know, there is so much opportunity with a title such as that. As a matter of fact, I met this afternoon with Program and Counsel for the committee with my chief of staff and my legislative director in Albany, and we talked about some of the priorities in terms of some roundtable discussions and hearings. We're going to look very closely at early intervention services, concerns about how that is, you know, being provided in terms of funding for our communities. There are some who are really struggling, some providers, and that then costs our communities a great deal because children don't have the access to the early intervention programs. And then also pre-K. Education, yes,
okay.
and pre-K programs.
Because early intervention could also mean addiction, alcohol addiction.
No,
it could
that's
mean
true. That's
drug
true.
addiction.
But
it could mean other things.
You're right.
So I just want to make sure we're talking education.
No, it's early. It's education, especially for children who have some kind of learning issues or. And you know, as a former special education teacher,
don't we all have special issues, and we're all learning on different levels, which is why Common Core is so difficult to.
Well, that's what makes us so unique, each of us, and makes our society so special, and the diversity, and everybody comes with different. I see it not as negative, but as positives, different talents, different strengths, and of course there are those, of course, in children who do have certain learning issues, and if we're able to interact very early, they have far more opportunity for success as they get older. And the earlier we begin that process, you know, when they get to kindergarten age, when their brain is really still developing, we can actually provide them with an education, and they could be responsive in a much more productive way. So early intervention is an essential service for our children.
You were a special ed teacher.
I was a special education, my master's in special education from Fordham University.
Oh, wow. And which school district did you?
I taught first in Brooklyn. I grew up in Brooklyn.
Yeah, what neighborhood?
Graduated from Brooklyn
Mill
College.
Basin.
Mill Basin.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I actually brought up in Brownsville.
Brownsville?
Yeah, Saratoga Avenue.
Oh, well, there you go.
I went to Tilden High School.
You went to Tilden, I went to Lafayette High School.
Yeah, so that was fancy.
See, we do this Brooklyn geography when you meet someone else in Brooklyn.
But no, I graduated a degree in education from Brooklyn College, and then a master's in Fordham with special education, moved up to Rockland about that time.
And I remember one of the big issues that I covered when I wrote for the Canarsie Courier was this breast density information law.
Yes.
And I remember I had pictures of dense breasts in the picture. It made for a salacious type of article, but,
Well, it was.
but it's
well,
a, but it's a
an
serious
important piece.
issue.
It's a very serious issue, and
Because
I tell you,
didn't realize that, you know, you could be, I'll use the street jargon, you could be flat-chested and have dense breast
Yes.
tissue. You could be a full-figured and not have it. So it doesn't matter the size of the breast, whether you have dense breast tissue, but it's the mammogram that can't see whether there's cancer
Yeah.
if you have dense breast tissue.
that's right. It hides. It hides.
How'd I get that?
It does hide. Very good. Very good.
Okay.
Dense breast tissue actually could hide a
Yeah.
tumor, and unfortunately, many women will go for their mammography and get a letter that says everything. You know, there was no indication of anything, and yet they could have small tumors that then evolve, and that's how it started with a woman from Long Island who actually had done that, had gone for mammographies regularly, and there was nothing indicated, and then she felt something and there still was nothing indicated. And she finally did go eventually for follow-up to exams, more significant exams, MRIs and things like that, and unfortunately discovered she had breast cancer, serious
How
breast
long
cancer.
ago is this? Because I know medical science, of course, the technology is advancing per day, not I wouldn't even say per year. So more and more I've dealt with, not exactly with that, but, you know, I mean, I'm not a medical doctor, I'm a rabbi, of course, but then I have to consult people, you know, about situations, so they tell me all their story.
Yeah, so this story led us, Senator Flanagan and myself, to develop this legislation that actually every woman who goes for a mammography who actually has dense breast tissue that is indicated in the report that you have dense breast tissue. Please follow up with your doctor for maybe additional exams that might be necessary, and we're saving lives. Once we passed it in New York, it passed, I think, Hawaii passed it, and then I think California, and then at least 20 other states have passed this legislation, and it is
Modeled
being
after
considered
New York's law.
Modeled after New
Which
York's
you
law,
sponsored.
which I sponsored
Okay.
with Senator Flanagan. Yes,
Who's
and
now
it
the
is
Senate
sa-
Majority Leader.
That's
so-
right. Yes, you know, and the truth is, I meet women. The other day, we were sitting and talking, and somebody mentioned something, and she said to me, "Oh, I got the letter that told me that, and actually we have scheduled to go for a follow-up exam." So I feel very proud that we are saving lives and raising awareness, and that's important.
When you talk about oversight, I have to bring this up because there's a big issue in your district about
Yes.
oversight.
Yes.
And it has to do with the East Ramapo School District. So here you are, teacher. Still, I presume you still have your license. You could still be called a teacher.
Of course, I could.
So-
I'm a teacher. I'm always a teacher. Once a teacher, always a teacher.
So here you are. You know, your heart and your passion is in education.
I taught in
You're-
East Ramapo
And you taught in East
for
Ramapo.
over 20 years.
And you're Jewish?
Yes.
Okay. So, you know, now you got this quandary about whether, you know, you have a school board rather, that's made up of religious.
Well, they are Hasidic and ultra-Orthodox. Yes.
Okay. And then they're something about the way they were voting or the way they were doing something, and then you wanted an outside monitor, even though who's independently chosen, even though these people are elected, and there's a thing. Do you feel? Well, first of all, I want to preface all this. Do you feel you've been unfairly treated in your
Yes.
characterization of how people have?
Yes, terrible.
Okay, so
I have been unfairly treated because
Yeah.
this is not about what religion the school board is. This is not about what culture they are or what color they are. This is about the actions of a school board and that are problematic. And this has been happening over a number of years. It started maybe in 2007 or 2008 when the entire school board then was taken over by one community. But that's not even the issue. The issue is the actions of the board.
so tell me about that, please.
You know, there was a beginning. They closed down a couple of the elementary schools and then were selling them. But of course, they had this assessor who came in and then assessed it at a very low value, and eventually that was seen as illegal, and he was charged with providing wrong information.
Mm-hmm.
They closed down schools, they were cutting programs. I'm just going to give you a few,
Sure.
because I can't go on and on.
Right, I
But
know. We could be here for many hours.
The controller did an audit of the textbook funding that is provided. All the private schools are provided. There was no documentation of where any of that money was going. A lot of school programs were cut, but none of the private school programs were cut. There, actually, transportation was expanded. But there were many, many issues in terms of cutting programs and what kind of information is provided to parents, guidance counselors, teachers cut, music and art programs cut. And there were a number of actions that the board had taken, and I can't go into detail, that were noted by the state education department. As
you
well.
could go into detail, but you don't have the time to
I
go into
don't
detail.
have the time to go
It's
into
not
detail.
no-
Right,
yeah, okay.
right.
It's not a legal
And
reason for
right.
you.
So
okay.
eventually, the state education department made a determination with with the regents that they would send in, with conversations
Yes.
with us in the state assembly and senate and the community. They decided to send in Hank Greenberg,
Who is from Albany,
Yes.
and member of Temple Israel in Albany, and
Yes.
member of the Jewish community here.
yes,
So
who
you should know
went
the
in
local.
I forget how many, it was several months.
Yes.
And to review the actions of the board and the budgets and all the necessary issues that he felt were important to be able to make a report in terms of what was happening in the district in response to a lot of the concerns of the public school parents who were very upset about what was happening. And also they would share their concern at board meetings. Unfortunately, the board was not present. The board would go into executive session for several hours and not come out till 11 o'clock at night, almost every single board meeting, which left very little opportunity for interaction, which further frustrated the public school parents.
Oh, these are elected officials, the school board.
Yes.
They're elected officials.
Yes.
They're unpaid, but they're elected.
That's right.
So
They have
couldn't the
to-
community just vote for someone else and have someone else?
They could, except that the majority of the community, really at this point, the larger majority of the community, the private school community, the community, the Hasidic and Orthodox community. And so they vote for this board, outnumbering the public school parents.
Right.
Although they are elected
Right.
by a large majority of the private school
Well, you just have to
parents.
lock the Orthodox in the
No,
homes.
but their responsibility is for focusing on the entire community. First, the public
They should,
school, because
right.
that is their responsibility,
Right.
being elected to the public school sector. But certainly, looking at the entire community as well. But that became problematic, and Hank Greenberg's report was very clear in terms of the issues of concern. And my colleagues and I looked at the issues, and we took the one piece of it and more or less took pretty much most of the language and worked on a piece of legislation, taking his recommendations for a monitor that would provide oversight of the school board. But it's more than oversight. In our language, we also talked about working with the school board on developing policy, providing guidance. This would be someone chosen by the state education department who would have background in education, and be able to provide guidance and discussion, and be able to, I thought, have a collaborative opportunity, and also to help them make decisions that would be more appropriate for the public school sector. And I believed deeply that this would be an opportunity to bring the communities together, to give more trust of the public school parents that they were making decisions that Hank Greenberg had suggested would be guided by the monitor as well. And I actually thought that there's also the opportunity for the monitor to override a decision by the board. If the board then would make a decision that, after much discussion, that the board was not going to follow what the monitor would suggest.
Where's the bone of contention?
That's a good question.
Okay, I heard that the bone of contention is that this is an appointed person, and maybe this is inaccurate, so I'm just asking
That's
you
fine.
with that caveat in mind. I don't want,
Yes.
this is a friendly interview. I just want to know that, that this overseer would be able to overrule the elected school board
Yes.
if it wasn't in the best interest of the public schools.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
And he could override, but the board would then have the opportunity to appeal that decision.
To whom?
To the state education
Who
department.
appointed the overseer?
Well, the state education department would have a court to appeal, an opportunity, a process to appeal. But,
Well, like a
but I
321
actually
like a
thought that
321A
that,
process,
I
or-
actually thought,
Yeah.
frankly, that
Yeah.
that would be rare.
Uh-huh.
Because I believed that there would be the opportunity to work together to provide guidance and direction. And maybe that would even be an opportunity for the monitor to say, well, you know, they're doing things quite appropriately. Perhaps they need just more funds, and they are moving forward in a manner that's appropriate. And they are working with me. Why couldn't we look at it that way rather than the other way? It's what I have been suggesting all along.
And that's what's in your heart.
That's
of
really,
heart.
this is
Okay.
what I believed in.
That's
Bringing
what
the
I'm-
community together, more trust. And don't forget, this is a board that really has focused on the private school sector. That's where their lives are. This monitor would bring to them understanding of a public school needs, that maybe they could work together and develop a policy and budget together that would actually be responsive to both communities, but also there would be more trust in what they'd be doing.
And they're recalcitrant, or they're resistant to this. And what?
And
what have
I
you-
think it's
and-
unfortunate. I think
and
it's
when-
unfortunate.
And when these board
And it's
members...
it's 5 years. It was 5 years.
okay.
And the goal really was to put together, working with the board, a plan to enact to assure that we would have in place an appropriate public school education for
so that
our
I
school
don't,
districts.
so that I don't continue the unfair whatever by accident. Tell me what has been where you feel you've been unfairly vilified.
I think I've been abused.
In what way? When? Yeah.
Abused in the language, in Twitter and all of those
Social
little
media.
social media
Mhm.
issues. They've attacked me personally, and only me of the three of us, which is the other piece here as a woman. There has been no willingness to really see this as a positive movement towards assuring that there is a public school education that's appropriate, as well as bringing the communities together, which is something I have said in every single time I have made a comment and a speech about this, that I have included that because I sincerely believed that it was appropriate. What has happened is that there's such a divide in the communities that it's frightening. It has created anti-Semitism. This is not about anti-Semitism. It has created anti-Semitism, and that I find I'm very fearful of that. As a Jew, I'm very upset about that. So what I really believed that by doing this, it was an opportunity to close that down and bring the communities together and create trust. And honestly, that was not the reaction, and I'm very disappointed that was not the reaction. I've met with somebody recently trying to explain that, and I actually met with groups of people who I have, members of the community, have very good relationships over the years, and trying to explain that was, obviously as a former public school teacher and kids, my own children who went to public school, I feel that's that is essential for our state. That's in our Constitution, providing quality education for all our children. That needs to be our goal. Of course, that is one piece that's so important, but raising trust, increasing trust, and assuring that there is guidance within that context, I saw it as a positive rather than an attack. And I think the attack on me was unfortunate and disappointed and insulted.
And to some extent, it brought up Brown v. Board of Education. It brought back from the South from the 1950s.
Yeah. Well, you know,
It
this
brought
is
that
a
case up.
large community of young children who are of color, Latino, African American, children who come from poverty, children who are immigrants, as my dad was, and children of high need who really need guidance and direction so that they can be part of our state and successful
Yeah.
in our communities. And their programs would diminish significantly. Now, I don't disagree with the board, and I've said this over and over again. The school district it needs additional funds, and we really have worked really hard over the last couple of years, given the change in the economic situation. We have increased the funding. We planned on increasing it even more if we were able to get assurance of this monitor.
Aside from social media, has the mainstream media, Gannett and all that, had treated you fairly?
No, the Main Street media, I think, had really taken a very strong view of this in terms of supporting the legislation. The New York Times, the Journal News, the LOHUD, they have...
That's Gannett. So,
Yes,
right.
Gannett. And they have truly seen this as a step in the right direction. Because they understood over the years the terrible conflict between the private school and public school parents, and then the lawyers that the board hired who attacked and used very unfortunate language for a parent and a student. And then the board said they would fire them, and they never did. And the millions of dollars they spent on this law firm, as compared to maybe a couple of $100,000 on the previous lawyer who represented the district. That, I think, is unfortunate, too.
And there was this gentleman, and I just did some research about this Benny Politsek, a community activist in Muncie. Do you know who he
Benny?
is? Politsek.
Okay.
P-O-L-A-T-S-E-C-K.
Okay, I don't know who that is.
He's a president of marketing firm Colossal PR, and he wrote an editorial that said, "In East Ramapo, sectarianism blinds a politician." And there's that headline, and that's a headline, and obviously there's his view of why that's, you take exception with that, I believe.
Well, I don't remember reading that.
Fine. Okay.
We were in session. I didn't read
No,
everything.
that's fine. I
But we
understand.
had many organizations, all the rabbis outside of the Hasidic community and the ultra-Orthodox community throughout Rockland County came together. Our Reform and Conservative rabbis in Rockland County all came in support of the legislation. Okay. The American Jewish Committee, which is more of a national committee, came out and made a statement in support of this legislation. New York City Bar Association and many other Jewish leaders throughout the state and within our communities joined in support of the legislation because they saw this as an opportunity to better provide for the public school students, but an opportunity especially to bring our communities together.
Was there some alternative measure, because you're working with Senator Carlucci on this and Assemblyman Zabrowski and yourself, to come up with at the last hours of the session, to come up with something?
There was something that was presented by Senator Carlucci. The Assemblyman Zabrowski and I sat down when we saw it. We weren't told about it. It just was introduced. And we sat down that day with Program and Council, and we decided that we would okay, let's see what we can do to compromise. So that legislation was 2.5 years, and so we said, okay, but we won't go to 5, which was the original legislation. We'll go to 4 or 3.5. We took parts of the legislation and tried to
Massage it.
Yeah, in a way that we could find more acceptable, but we would find compromise. The override wasn't in it, but we said, okay, we'll have the monitor appeal to the State Education Department for a review of an action, and then also ask for a stay of the action as well. We did that. The problem is that first of all, I don't know if it ever would have passed anyway. That's the first thing. But we did try, and we did revise it. There were several pieces of it and I'll mention one that really was a point at which we wouldn't compromise. The language on that bill was that the only opportunity that monitor would have to have any involvement would be only with violations of state or federal law, which means that the monitor couldn't look at budgets and review budgets and go over to various policy issues, but only if the board had a violation of state or federal law. How would the monitor suggest that? They would have to be taken to court. And also the issue of the executive sessions, the monitor would be restrained from really talking about what was going on within that context. So those are two issues, and there were several others, but those were the two main issues of concern that we could not, and quite frankly, the state education department felt strongly as well that those were issues that would not provide any opportunity for a monitor to be able to interact and work together with the board. And it was just something in writing that had no impact whatsoever.
So
that was the end of that. But I don't know if it would have passed anyway.
Because I remember at the last days of session that all of a sudden there was this huddle in the back of the assembly chamber, and it was like, oh, wait a minute, if I only could be a fly on, in there, if I could get my microphone in there secretly.
Well, we tried. We did. I think that Assemblyman Zabrowski and I truly made every effort to say, okay, we can live with that. We won't do the override. We'll change that. But if the monitor will go in there without any ability to really interact with the board, except if for some reason there was a clear indication that the board had violated state or federal law.
Right.
And then the question is, does that mean it has to go to court before he can suggest that they violate state of, and then would the board allow the monitor to have any interaction with them other than if there were situations of state or federal law? There was no sense to doing that at all.
What about the other observant Jewish legislators, Phil Goldfeder, Mike Simanowicz, Dov Heiken?
Yeah, I don't understand it, quite frankly.
What did I just stumble upon?
They were not happy with, they opposed the legislation, and they refused to have any conversation at all. They wouldn't have a conversation with me or with any of our colleagues. They didn't want to discuss it, period.
Well, that's not nice.
Honest to goodness, that's the truth. I actually said to Assemblyman Goldfeder, let me show you this letter so that you understand that this is not about anti-Semitism. This is not, not what this is. And I showed him the letter from the various rabbis throughout Rockland County, outside of the community, who wrote a letter in support of the legislation. He wouldn't look at it. He threw it back at me.
Wow.
So I really was disappointed in that.
So emotions ran high over this.
Yeah. Oh yes, I was disappointed. I thought that at least an honest conversation and sharing why you feel that way and why is this necessary or why you disagree with me in a personal way would have been a much better approach.
And Dov Heiken? Nothing? Not even a...
No.
No, okay. What about Walter Mosley? Did he switch?
I don't understand that.
He switched from supporting it to not
supporting
supporting it?
Yeah, he took his name off. I don't quite understand. He wouldn't. I tried to have a conversation with him. He didn't want to have a conversation with me.
Wow.
So I think that there was a great deal of pushback from the African American and Latino task force. They almost every single one of them supported the legislation, with the exception of Mosley.
Oh, wow. So you think because he represents
Assemblyman
Crown Heights.
Aubrey was one of the strongest supporters.
Right. But because Assemblyman Mosley represents Crown Heights, so that's...
That could be.
Yeah. So who's this Weissmandl? What is it? He's the head of the board?
He's the president of the board.
President of the board. What's his first name? Well, I'm Weissmandl. That's what I remember because
I knew it.
Okay, that's fine. You'll find
I knew it, but you're asking me, so...
That's fine. No, that's
Yehudi.
okay. I have those...
Yehudi.
Yehudi.
Right.
Okay, Weissmandl. Is he talking to you?
We had conversations previously, not recently. We had a conversation about the spin-up bill a number of months ago. This was right before
But recently,
Hank Greenberg.
towards the end of session?
No, we haven't had a conversation, no.
Because he's been up here. I mean, I've seen him.
No, I haven't had a
and
conversation with him. No, he didn't reach out to me.
Wow. You would think that's how you get these...
You would think.
Now, your bill made it through the Education Committee.
And we passed on the floor. We passed in the Assembly.
And it passed in the Assembly?
Yes, it did.
Oh, what was the vote? Do you remember?
It was 80 to... I forgot.
Okay.
I forgot, 80 to...
But you had 80 yay votes.
80 votes.
And it took 76 to...
Right.
Yeah, so it was a close vote.
It was a close vote, yeah. But some people, it was a late day, so some people had to leave for a variety of reasons. So, and then there were two votes that I had, but one, both of them had, one one of the assembly members was ill and the other one
Right.
had a personal issue
Right.
at home, and told me the day before they were disappointed it wasn't that day, because then they could have voted for it. So I would have had probably about 84, 85 votes. This is
And-
what I anticipated.
Well, let me ask you, I don't want to leave them out. David Weprin, how did is he support? No?
Voted no.
Okay, and Speaker Silver, or former Speaker Silver?
Voted no.
He voted no?
Yes,
Okay.
he did.
Did he explain why to you, or is he not talking
No,
about this
we
either?
didn't. We didn't have that.
Okay.
We did have a very brief conversation early on. Speaker, when I first got to the state assembly, I had a meeting with the superintendent of East Ramapo. There's 2007, with members of the board, with actually one of the rabbis of the community who came up, who was involved. Talking about the issues of East Ramapo and the concern about some of the funding and the formula. Because I still do believe that the funding formula is skewed, that there needs to be a revision. And I've said that for years. I actually wrote a piece of legislation in 2008 or 9, which included a number of other school districts, to talk about sometimes how funding formulas are skewed in terms of what the assumption is for income. And I still believe that there needs to be additional funds.
Look, I used to,
And Speaker Silver was very open to the concerns of the community and very open to having this dialogue. So.
In the 80s and 90s, for over a decade, I was a reporter for WRKL when they were really doing news. And, they were still talking about the funding of the school districts in Rockland County as being inadequate.
Yes, they are. And I will continue to say that. And East Ramapo, given the circumstances, it's a high-need district, and there is the funding formula is skewed, suggesting that there is a higher income than there is in terms of the formula. And it needs to be reviewed. And but I would suggest that that's not unique for East Ramapo. There are a lot of school districts that are in that situation.
Right. In the few seconds we have, because I think you oppose this, the education investment tax credit.
I do oppose it. I've always opposed it.
So the observant Jewish community, again, that's an issue that they
Well,
wanted.
it's interesting. This is the first year that they've actually been vocal about that particular issue. I don't believe in the investment tax credit, because I do feel that we need to utilize the funds that would be taken from the state fiscal budget and be given to private schools. And I do believe that it would go to the wealthiest. I quite frankly do not believe that it would go to most of your religious schools, either Catholic or Jewish or other religions. I believe it would actually be used by the wealthiest in our communities to the charter schools, because that's what this is about. It's about millionaires and their corporations. Because if you really knew that legislation, and we could spend some time at it, we don't have the time, but if you looked at that legislation, you would realize that this is about millionaires supporting private schools and charter schools.
Okay.
That's what it's about.
Mark, we have to.
But I really appreciate you discussing this and being so open about this. I just want. Did anyone accuse you of being anti-Semitic?
Yes, on a regular basis, daily.
So
there was someone from my community, and I'm not going to say a name, who actually had a picture of me on social media calling me Khomeini.
That's hurtful.
And I think that's disappointing.
Yeah, well, more than disappointing.
Yes,
I would
it is.
say. You're being kind when you say disappointing.
But people know me in Rockland County and throughout the region. They know I care deeply about the children. They know that my motives are honest.
Pure.
And I'm hopeful that that will carry out. And, we have to work together, and I represent all the communities. It's one of the most diverse in Rockland County, and I'm very proud of having that opportunity.
Yes.
And so we need to move on and come together and really make a difference for the children.
Keep up the good work and be successful, and,
Thank you.
Go ahead. Give her a blessing.
Give her a blessing.
She needs
Thank
it.
you. Thank you, Red Assemblyman Jeff. Thank you for, that's what America makes great, that we can debate all the issues and open up, and that's what we're in the Jewish View.
Yes.
And continue your good work for the Jewish people and the New York State, and do it with good health.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Rabbi. Thank you very much.